Hi guys, welcome ladies and gentlecats and boys and girls to another CatmasterOP video. I just quickly want to go over my new character because I think it could be interesting for people and I don't want to explain the same things 5 times every stream. So what I decided to do is a Ngamahu's Cyclone Marauder. We went with Chieftain. I wanted to go Berserker. Just to put things into context, my old character, which I died with in the top 10 Hierophant ladder, was a Hierophant. And I could have quickly thrown together another Winter Orb character and just pushed in the Inquisitor ladder, as there's a lot of dead people there and you probably could easily get a top 10 demi there at the very least. But I wanted to do something a little bit different, so I had the upgraded version of the Panquit Salitzli Maul. That's the upgraded version of the Quitcholi. This one has a line that says, enemies killed explode, dealing 10% of their life as fire damage. And I was under the assumption that this would chain, so I could actually use this and enemies would explode, and then the explosion would kill other enemies, and in turn the enemies would kill again, would explode again. But that doesn't seem to be the case. Enemies only explode if you directly kill them. They don't explode if they die to your ignite, and they don't explode if they die to the explosion, is what I found out so far. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I didn't have enough damage scaling, but that's how it felt to me, and that's what people pointed out to me as a concern when I started leveling the character, because the Shaper explodey maces that everyone uses for their spellcaster builds now also have that property where enemies killed explode, dealing a percentage of their life as fire damage, and those explosions do not chain. My backup solution was that I'd either go with the Ngamahu or with this Flesh Ripper that I found, which is, you know, a pretty decent, I think 580 PDPS weapon with quality, so would have been pretty cool, but it also needs you to go crit, right? It's not worth it to not go crit with this. Actually, it's more than 580. It's 580 on paper, but then you have the 20% chance to deal double damage. So if you include 20% more from, you know, every hit having 20% chance to deal double damage, then it's far more than 600 PDPS. I'm probably gonna go with Queen of the Forest just for the zoom clear speed, but I do have a Calm's Heart if I need to get beefy. But then we'll have to 4-link the Cyclone somewhere on gear. We're probably not gonna do that on these Worm Scale gauntlets that we're using. Mentioning those, I quickly want to go over the gear that I'm using for this character before I give you a short demonstration of how it plays. We're using a 5-link Sunplate that I found, and you know, it's just a leveling 5-link, nothing special. Using 2-socket Bubonic Trail. You don't need 2 abyssal sockets, 1 abyssal socket is enough. But keep in mind you get increased damage for each type of abyss jewel affecting you, so you want to use different abyss jewels. I'm using a Murderous and a Searching Eye that give me phasing, blind, and onslaught. A little bit of fire and physical damage to axe attacks. A little bit of life here. Nothing special, but it buffs the build quite a bit. You can see when I take this off, the tooltip goes down to 13.8 from 16 point something. Keep in mind that the tooltip goes up and down anyway because of the Herald. Damn. So here. And there's varying buffs that I get from the aspect of the cat. I'm using this Jade Amulet with aspect of the cat that gives you an alternating buff. If you don't know aspect of the cat, you can easily look it up. In one phase you get crit chance to avoid damage, and you're harder for enemies to see, so that's when I'm cloaky, right? And in the other stance you have attack and cast speed, which is really cool synergy with Elemental Overload, because with Elemental Overload you need to crit about once every 8 seconds to keep up the buff. So this is perfect because every, you know, so and so many seconds I get increased critical strike chance. So Ngamahu's Flame is obviously the core piece of this build. What's really important here is to have a top attack speed roll. Luckily mine dropped like this and has a 12% increased attack speed roll. That's a max roll. It has pretty decent fizz damage, innate conversion and penetration, but most importantly this triggers a level 16 Molten Burst on melee hit. Molten Burst is the little projectiles, basically the secondary effect of Molten Strike, but it does not say Molten Strike, so you cannot use Molten Strike threshold jewels, right? But you get projectiles when you hit enemies, and this procs, So we're using GMP, elemental damage with attacks, life gain on hit, and added fire damage in my 4-socket Ngamahu's Flame. Keep in mind, this item grants a skill, just like Whispering Ice grants the Ice Storm skill. Support gems socketed in this weapon will support the skill granted by this weapon, right? So this is really cool because it does not need to be linked in order to be a 7 link if you roll 6 sockets on it, which is incredibly strong, right? We're using Worm Sign just for the Rampage while at maximum endurance charges. In order to gain endurance charges, we're running a Warlord's Mark on Blasphemy, and running a Blood Rage just for, you know, Frenzy Charge generation and attack speed, move speed. Well, move speed you get from the Frenzy Charges, but you also get attack speed from the Blood Rage itself. And for the main skill, we're using Cyclone for zooming, elemental damage with attacks, Onslaught, Fire Pen, and added fire damage. I could take the Onslaught out, but Onslaught gives you 8 seconds Onslaught on dealing a killing blow with a 41% chance at the current level. And it gives you Onslaught on hit against unique enemies, whereas the Onslaught from the Murderous that I'm using is only a chance to gain Onslaught for 4 seconds on kill. So that's a little bit of a difference. Blast setup is just still leveling, don't reference this is not great. But that's what we're currently using. We're also using Mokus, still a remnant of leveling. It's just really nice to get ignited by your enemies and to all of a sudden have 20% attack and cast speed. But it's probably not something that I'm going to run in endgame. So now for a quick demonstration of how the character plays in Blood Aqueducts. We haven't really progressed past that yet. As you can see, it's already pretty fast. We're using a Quicksilver of Adrenaline, which is kind of a must with Cyclone, right? And of course, PoE throws my skills into the mixer when we unequip and equip items really quickly like this, just so you see it with the full speed, right? With the Blood Rage you get a couple percentage extra speed because of the Frenzy Charges. And you can see that the Rampage effects complement the clear very well. You basically just hold down right click, you know, or tape the mouse to your ass and move through the map. Pretty simple. And we're gonna be able to scale that up into maps no problem. We just need to 6 sockets on the Ngamahu's Flame and a little bit of fire damage, area damage scaling in the tree. It's gonna be awesome, right? And you can see this works pretty well. We could also get a second curse maybe for flammability. That would also be a damage boost. There's a bunch of options that you can go for in order to scale the damage higher. I'm fairly confident we'll be able to farm yellow and red tier maps with this as soon as we level up and get a little bit more damage here or there, right? So my tree so far is a very, very generic fire damage Marauder tree, right? We're going out of the life because this is just strictly melee damage. Keep in mind that the Molten Burst is a projectile attack, right? This is not a melee attack. So it does not benefit from melee damage, which is why I avoided most melee damage in the tree, because it's just inefficient to pick up. It will only affect your Cyclone and not the Molten Burst balls. Right, we'll go out of the life here, pick up the life there. We went through the resists because we're solo self-found. It's a lot easier to gear. Ideally, eventually we'll go out of the resists and be able to refund, but it will only save 1 point anyway because we'll have to connect through here or through here or through here. So, you know, it's really good value for the nodes right now, and as we travel through it, it's awesome. We're probably going to pick up another endurance charge because of Chieftain. I'll go into that in a second. Just quickly want to show you the basic tree. Basically, while leveling, I passed around here through life and fire damage, and then as quickly as possible into Templar. I was leveling actually as a spellcaster. I was leveling this with Fireball Ignite. It was pretty fun, but ultimately not that great. I felt that for good ignite damage I'd need to use double Pyre, and then with Pyre, if you ignite enemies, they're destroyed, so you can't prolive off their corpses on the ground. Anyway, so, you know, picking up a little bit accuracy, attack, cast speed stuff, because we don't pick up Resolute Technique, we pick up Elemental Overload. Elemental Overload is a huge more damage multiplier if you've crit in the past 8 seconds. Critting once in 8 seconds is pretty possible. It's, you know, not unrealistic to achieve. And that's the tree so far. The further plans are to go into the Duelist and to pick up a 2-handed melee damage and maybe another endurance charge, and of course an assload of life. Wrecking Ball is really, really good, so eventually we want to go to that, but that's a long travel, and I don't know how far we can make it. Right? Yeah, that's basically it for passives so far. We went first lap with Ngamahu Flame's Advance. What a surprise, we're using Ngamahu's Flame. This converts 50% of your physical damage to fire for 100% fizz to fire conversion, because Ngamahu's Flame grants you another 50%, right? And it gives you 10% penetration. So it's just really good. Every 10 seconds you get 70% of your physical as extra fire for 3 seconds. That means you get, that's pretty hard. 30% of 70 is like 21% more damage, I would say, over like all average. But of course, it's for those moments, like those pivotal moments in the fight. You're fighting for a while and you don't seem to get that tanky rare down. Then all of a sudden, you gain 70% physical damage as extra fire, and it just melts things, right? We get Taoa Forest Strength just to get an endurance charge engine. So every time I kill a burning enemy, I get a 20% chance to gain an endurance charge. So that's next to Warlord's Mark, my endurance charge generation. That means that eventually I will be able to drop Warlord's Mark if I want to. There is the option to go Blood Magic, to not use any aura reservations at all, but right now I feel it would be stupid because Herald of Ash and Warlord's Mark Blasphemy are just incredibly good to have on this character. But, you know, later in maps they may not be as relevant, especially as we pick up Leech from the tree and we don't depend on the Warlord's Mark Leech anymore. My plan for Merciless Lab is to pick up Ramako's Sunlight, because this will help a lot with resists, right? It gives you another layer of defense by converting 10% of the physical damage from hits that you take as fire damage. That's really, really good. Makes you immune to Ignite, which basically saves you a flask slot if you want to be really safe. Most people don't use burn remove on flasks, I have to say though, because normally you want shock, bleed, freeze and chill and curse immunity, and then you also have one flask that's maybe unique or you know, is not a duration flask, so you don't rely on the secondary effect. Like right here, freeze and chill on a life flask is pretty nice, but keep in mind that it doesn't prevent you from, you know, being chilled on chilled ground. If you walk over chilled ground, you use this flask and the flask effect ends when you're at full life, or even instantly if you use it on low life, then you're not going to be immune to chill. So what I'm saying is it's quality of life. You're unaffected by Ignite, right? But it also means that Mokus will not work anymore. And then for Uber Lab, we're going to go with Hinekora, which basically is just another layer of damage, because you got a 10% chance to cover rare and unique enemies in Ash for 10 seconds on hit. And as the tooltip implies, being covered in Ash applies 20% less movement speed and 20% increased fire damage taken, and lasts for 4 seconds. 20% increased fire damage taken is a 20% more multiplier, so that's like a little extra support gem, right? This is a pretty good build. It's gonna be awesome. It scales extremely well with Abyss Jewels. I have this jewel, which, you know, gives me a little bit of lightning fire fizz to axe attacks. And, you know, we go from 9.2 to 8.4 if I take this out. So this is almost 10% more damage. I would say like 7-8% at this point, but it's pretty good. And obviously we're looking to pick up another jewel socket or two. And like I said, another endurance charge or two wouldn't hurt, because we got pretty good endurance charge engines in the form of Warlord's Mark Blasphemy and Taoa. So we can rely on that. Also, we get increased fire damage per endurance charge, so that's a nice little extra. It's by no means necessary to stack endurance charges for this, because even if you get like 8 endurance charges, that's like 48% increased fire damage. That's like, yeah, whatever. But it's you know, the equivalent of a bad helmet enchant, because the helmet enchants that don't provide super good value to the skills, they'll still give you 40% increased damage. So, you know, that's basically that. Yeah, that sums it up so far. Build is looking pretty good. We're going to make some coffee now, fire up the stream, and then get this build into maps. If you want to check it out, my channel on Twitch is twitch.tv/CatmasterOP. I stream daily, and if you have any questions about the build, that's just the easiest way to get in touch with me. Just come into my stream and ask me. I'll try to answer as good as I can. Also, I run the Faded Connections podcast with Valor Mage, if you're unfamiliar with that. We had an episode about the Legion announcement just a couple days back, which is on my YouTube now. We had Tarky Cat and Zizaran as guests, both community members of the PoE family that you should know. And yeah, that's basically that. If you're hyped about Legion, I also want to recommend Tarky Cat's podcast called Bakelast, which was during the announcement last week with the guest Jonathan Rogers, GGG developer. Very good in-depth explanation of the upcoming melee and combat rework in Path of Exile. And there's going to be a Bakelast on Saturday, on the upcoming Saturday, with Chris Wilson as a guest. So yeah, holler at Tarky Cat if you got questions for Chris Wilson. That's it. My name's CatmasterOP. Check out the stream, check out the vids, and I'll see you all around.